Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Chop It Up. Once again, have another special guest on the podcast today. We bring in our college basketball analyst and expert, if you want to go that far, Hunter Fullerton. Hunter, thanks for coming on once again, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
March is in the air. The madness is here with the NCAA college basketball tournament kicking off this week. We're going to take you guys through our brackets. Mine is pretty much finalized. I'm not sure about you, Hunter. There's a few adjustments I may make as well. But what's the confidence level at right now before we get started?
I'm gonna say relatively low. I quite a few upsets this year. I'm hoping for an exciting tournament, and so I picked my bracket. I guess as a manifestation of that.
I like it. I like it. Before we get started giving you guys our predictions, we just want to preface this by saying we're going to go region by region until we get to the Final Four, and then we'll give you guys our Final Four predictions. So take your brackets out, follow along. We're going to start off in the South region in the top left, where we have Auburn facing the winner of Alabama State, and I don't even know who the other team is. St. Francis, I believe, 1 versus 16 matchup. I like Auburn in this one. I think this Auburn team is very experienced. I like Bruce Pearl, and I don't think this is going to be much of a game.
Yeah, I agree. I got Auburn here, 16 over, or sorry, excuse me, 1/16. It's a shoe in. I'm taking Auburn.
Let's move it down to the next game. We have Louisville and Creighton taking place in Lexington, so a little bit of a home field advantage there for Louisville. I'm taking the Cardinals in this one. I like the fact that they're in Kentucky. They don't have to travel far. I think that's kind of a part that goes under the radar a little bit in this tournament is how much these college guys have to travel to play. And with Louisville having the home field advantage, I like them here.
I'm on the same page, 2 for 2 so far with you. I like what I saw from the Cardinals in the ACC tournament, and I'm a big fan of Chucky Hepburn. So I think that the defensive mindset in the backcourt is really going to take over here, and they're going to have a good game and upset, or sorry, not upset, but beat Creighton.
Next, we have UC San Diego and Michigan, a game that a lot of people think is going to be an upset, and I'm going to ride that train. This is UC San Diego's first year being tournament eligible, and I think they pick up a win. It just kind of seems like a Cinderella story that you would see in March Madness. Michigan just won the Big Ten tournament. I think a lot of people tend to get misled by what they see in these conference tournaments. This was a Michigan team that did not finish strong in the regular season. Obviously, their confidence is back up after winning the Big Ten tournament. But I just think this UC San Diego team can play. I like the Tritons to make a push in this tournament, and I'm going to take them over the Wolverines.
Yeah, I hate to follow suit, but I'm going to take the same pick. I like guard play when it comes to March, and UC San Diego, I have a feeling they're going to be able to pull out Michigan's big guys, pull them out of the paint, and make them pay. So I like an exciting 12/5 upset here.
If UC San Diego is to win this game, they will face the winner of what could potentially be another upset in March. Yale versus Texas A&M. Last year, we saw Yale take down Auburn when they were a 13 seed. We see them again being the 13 seed here with the Bulldogs. I know a lot of people are taking Yale. I've thought about it. It could go either way. It's really 50-50 for me. I'm going to take Texas A&M. I think that this Aggie team has been through a lot this season, with how stacked the SEC team is, the SEC is in general, getting 14 teams in the tournament or whatever it was. I think they're battle tested. And I think although they picked up some tough losses, I think battle tested teams tend to benefit from that strength of schedule in March. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with the Aggies here.
Yeah, this is our first difference. I'm taking Yale here. I know, we just picked a 12 seed upset, but I got to go roll with the 13 seeded Yale here. I like the experience they have. I apologize. I'm definitely going to mispronounce his last name, but Pulakidis, great 3-point shooter, averaging almost 20 on the year. And not to forget these guys, the same kid upset Auburn last year in the tournament. So I like a win from Yale here.
I like it. I think it's a bold move. If Yale walks away with the win there, I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever. I just think as much as we love the upsets in March, sometimes you got to be like, all right, like I should probably take the favorite here. And that's what I'm going to do with A&M. But if that goes the other way, I will not be surprised. Let's take it down to our first play-in game, if you will. Ole Miss will face the winner of San Diego State and North Carolina. This is a Tar Heel team that a lot of people think shouldn't be in the tournament. I probably agree with that. San Diego State, I think if they're to beat North Carolina, they could give Ole Miss a run for their money. But at the same time, Chris Beard, the head coach for the Rebels, this is a guy that's been in the national championship when he was at Texas Tech. He has experience going on deep runs in this tournament. And I think that this Ole Miss squad is actually poised to make a deep run this year. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with the running Rebs.
All right, I don't want to sound crazy here. Don't judge me just solely based off my South Side bracket. That being said, I'm rolling with the 11 seed, 12 seed, and 13 seed in my South Side. Uh, whoever SDSU or NC North Carolina, whoever wins, I still got them over Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is a solid squad, but they're sort of have a you know, fraudulent resume based on that loaded SEC. I think there's a little bias there. Both SDSU and UNC are experienced. I like experienced guards in the tournament, and I expect them to upset the Rebels.
I like the counter there. I think it's hard when you see matchups like this because obviously, Ole Miss is probably the better team this year, but at the same time, San Diego State and North Carolina are both programs that have made big runs in recent years in this tournament. Obviously, North Carolina being a blue blood, but at the same time, San Diego State just made the national championship a couple years ago. We've seen them in this position time and time again, and they've made deep runs. And so I think it's interesting, and we'll see this a little bit later when we talk about UConn. But seeing these blue bloods with their backs up against the wall, how they'll fare in this tournament when they're not necessarily favored is, I think, a storyline to look out for. So let's move it down. We got Iowa State and Lipscomb. I know people like the 14s beating the threes. It's been trendy recently. Not here. I like this Cyclone team. I paid close attention to him at the second half of the year. I know Keyshawn Gilbert's out. He's one of the better players in the country, not just in the Big 12. Obviously, he's going to be out for Iowa State, but I still think that this team can score. Curtis Jones was lighting it up the other night against BYU. Even though they lost that game, I liked what I saw from the Cyclones. I like them to beat Lipscomb.
Yeah, I agree. The Cyclones played in the Big 12. They've been facing tough teams all year. So even without Keyshawn Gilbert, I expect them to take on Lipscomb and take them down. I know Lipscomb can shoot a little bit, but at the end of the day, I'm taking the Big 12 team over the mid-major here.
That will lead us right into our first 10-7 matchup of the tourney. You have Marquette, which is essentially the Miami Heat prep school, bringing out guys like Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Wade, Jay Crowder, even facing the New Mexico Lobos. I think this is an interesting matchup. New Mexico coming out of the Big 12. Marquette maybe not having the season some people thought they were going to have. A great guard battle here between the point guards for New Mexico and Kai Jones of Marquette. And so I think that, when you have a guy like Donovan Dent from New Mexico, and obviously Kai Jones, we know can play at an elite level as well. I think that makes for a really interesting matchup. But I'm going to take the 10 seed in New Mexico to beat Marquette in a close one.
Yeah, I got Marquette here. I'm a fan of Cam Jones. I've been watching him all year. I think this could go either way. New Mexico's really solid on defense, and Marquette, has a pretty powerful offense, and they have some experience. But strictly because how many upsets I've already picked in this South Side, I think I had to go with Marquette here. Yeah.
Yeah, safe bet. And speaking of safe bets, I'm going to take Michigan State to obliterate Bryant. I think this Sparty team is really dangerous in this tournament. I expect them to make a deep run under Tom Izzo and company. They're experienced. They've been here before. And I really just don't think you're going to see Bryant giving Michigan State much of a battle here.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a 2/15, pretty easy decision. That being said, I do like the Spartans throughout the tournament. They're a pretty complete team, if not maybe the most complete team in this tournament. The only thing they're maybe lacking is that go-to guy. Although Jace Richardson has really turned it on when they needed it. So I like the Spartans here, and I expect them to make a deep run.
That will take us to the second round. We're going to stay in the South region here. Going back to the top, we have Auburn and Louisville. We both had this matchup. I think this is one is going to be closer than people expect. Louisville walks away with the win here in Kentucky. I'm not going to be shocked. but I just think that Auburn is really, really good. I know they didn't finish the year the way people expected to. And I think it is important to note that teams that kind of start to go cold in March maybe be a little bit hesitant. But in this case, I just think that the experience and the depth they have, especially in that front court, is really going to overpower Louisville here.
Yeah, I like uh I like the Cardinals odds at home this time. I'm taking the Louisville Cardinals. Hear me out. A one seed loses about every other year in the second round, so I had to knock one of them out. I think Auburn's my least favorite one seed this year, strictly based on analytics. I'm taking Louisville. Also, I believe in them. Like I said, good showing in the ACC tournament, and it's going to be a home game. But yeah, I want to see a one seed go down, so I'm taking Louisville here.
I like it. I like it. Things are starting to get spicy here as we move on in the bracket. That will lead us to UC San Diego and Texas A&M. In my case, you have UC San Diego and Yale. So you have a 12-13
Yep.
matchup. I'm gonna let you
12,
tackle this
13.
game first.
Yeah, I got San Diego advancing. We can glance over it quickly. I think just they're a complete team. They play defense, they run, they shoot the ball well. Yale has some shooters as well, but I just like the excitement surrounding this San Diego team. Obviously, first year tournament eligible. I think they're gonna be fired up. They're gonna take down Yale, head on to the Sweet 16.
I also have UC San Diego moving past Texas A&M in my case, but same thing. I think this UC San Diego team, like you said, is complete, and I think you pretty much covered all the bases on what I was going to say. So that would lead us to an Auburn UC San Diego matchup in the Sweet 16, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But now we have, in my case, Ole Miss and Iowa State. I believe you had Iowa State and San Diego State, North Carolina, winner of that. I like Ole Miss
Yep,
here.
yep.
I think that the SEC schedule, I think the teams that they've played, the experience they have, and obviously Chris Beard being at the helm, I talked about that a little bit earlier. But I really think that's going to come into play a factor in this tournament. Don't get me wrong, I like this Iowa State team, but I think at this point in the tournament, this is where you'll really start to see the injuries for the Cyclones start to mount up. And I have Ole Miss making a push to the Sweet 16 as a 6 seed here, knocking off Iowa State in the second round.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I could definitely see it happening. I think once again, sort of strictly based on analytics, based on the amount of upsets I have on this side of the bracket. I took Iowa State, but I do believe in the Cyclones. Like I said, they're out. They're missing their star point guard. That being said, they have scoring. Curtis Jones lit it up the other day. I see them moving on to the Sweet 16 here, but I don't see him making him past that without a healthy squad.
No doubt. That leads us to a 10 versus 2 matchup in New Mexico taking on Michigan State. I think New Mexico could give the Spartans a run for their money. However, I just think Michigan State's a little bit too talented. I think, they're hot right now, despite what we saw in the Big Ten tournament. And I think that this Michigan State team is just going to overpower New Mexico a little bit.
Yeah, I have Marquette and Michigan State, but I'm taking Michigan State for pretty much the same reasons. They're a complete squad, and you don't pick against Izzo when it comes to March. So pretty simple decision for me. Michigan State into the Sweet 16.
That takes us to the Sweet 16. At the top right here, we have Auburn and UC San Diego. Excuse me, a 1 versus 12 matchup that you don't really see that often. I have a feeling that you're going to go UC San Diego right here. It's just an instinct that I have. I'm going Auburn. I think that the 1 seed, I think at some point you kind of have to call it in and be like, all right, like I expect them to take care of business here. I think Auburn's going to win this game. As long as they get past Louisville, I think their path, as long as they match up with UC San Diego, I think that really favors Auburn and just the talent they have. So I'm going to go with the Tigers in this one.
Yeah, I got Louisville and UC San Diego up here, but I'm taking Louisville, the higher seed here. Like you're saying, eventually Magic runs out, but specifically, I like Louisville in this game. Even though it's a weak ACC, I didn't really want to move Louisville onto the Elite Eight. That being said, if they match up against UC San Diego, I think it's a favorable matchup. They have a good defensive backcourt, and that should be able to limit lots of UC San Diego's shooters. And like I said, eventually the Magic's got to run out. So I got Louisville heading to the Elite Eight.
That brings us to Michigan State and Ole Miss in my case. I think this is where the magic runs out for Ole Miss. I really like this Michigan State team. I like the way they defend. I like their athleticism on both sides of the floor, and really just the experience and leadership they have. This seems like a group that's just tough. They can handle adversity. We've seen it, whether it's in close games or playing from behind. And so I think that, March favors teams that are resilient and tough. And I think Michigan State represents that better than anyone in the country. So I have Michigan State moving on to the Elite Eight.
Yep, I got MSU heading to the Elite Eight as well. For me, they run into battle tested and injury ridden Cyclones, and due to that, I got MSU taking them down.
That takes us to Auburn and Michigan State, a 1 versus 2 seed facing off in the Elite Eight. I promise you, all these picks are not going to be as cookie cutter as a 1 versus 2 in the Elite Eight. But this is what I have right now, and I like the Spartans in this one. We saw these two teams play down in Maui earlier this season, not necessarily playing against each other, but just playing in the same tournament. And I know Auburn probably has the size advantage with Janai Broom and some of the other playmakers they have in the front court, but I just like something about this Michigan State team. I really can't describe it necessarily. And so for that reason, I'm going to be going with the Spartans to make another appearance under Tom Izzo in the Final Four.
Yeah, I got an 8-2 matchup, Louisville versus Michigan State here in the Elite Eight. I'm going to take MSU for the same reasons I've been taking them, right? They're complete. They play under Tom Izzo. And like I said, I think the ACC was relatively weak this year. And so Louisville is peaking at the right time, but eventually they're going to run into a battle-tested Big Ten team that's going to take them out.
Let's take it down to the West now. So we're looking at the bottom left region of the bracket here. We have Florida and Norfolk State. I'm taking Florida 1/16, and I have nothing else to say about that.
Yeah, I got Florida as well. I watched them. What was it? It must have been Sunday in the
Yeah.
SEC championship, and they're a complete squad. Man, I love watching them play. They're really tough, and I don't see them running into any issues too early.
Let's get into this 9-8 matchup here. I think it's going to be an interesting one. You have UConn, the two-time reigning champions, taking on an Oklahoma team that's been somewhat sneaky this year. I just don't see Dan Hurley losing in the first round. I think that this UConn team, it's been really up and down year for them, but I think Hurley has the coaching advantage here. And I just think that this UConn team, and I mean, who knows? They could be poised to make another deep run. I just think they're too inconsistent. They haven't looked great as of recent. So for that reason, I'm going to take UConn to go in the first round, but after that, I think things could get shaky for the Huskies.
Yeah, I got UConn here, sort of for the same reasons. I just always bet on Dan Hurley. Uh, from a schematical standpoint, I think he's probably the best offensive coach probably in the nation. And so I think he's going to have his boys ready to go. He's going to dial up some good plays. And honestly, I think it's going to be a little bit of a blowout. I think UConn runs away with this one.
That brings us to a 12 versus 5 here. Memphis and Colorado State. Colorado State just came off winning the Mountain West. Memphis won their conference as well. I know a lot of people want to take the Colorado State here. It's typical, especially with the 12 versus 5. But I have Memphis. I know they're facing some injuries right now. But I just think Penny Hardaway has these guys squared away. I think he's finally found his rhythm with this Memphis program. And so for that reason, I'm going to take Memphis to get the dub here in a close one, albeit over Colorado State.
Yeah, I got Memphis as well. I like PJ Haggerty, put up 40 in his conference tournament. I expect him to have a big game, sort of carry this team, be a leader. And so I expect Memphis to pull out the dub.
The winner of this game will face the winner of Maryland and Grand Canyon. Some people are calling it Slam Canyon. I've seen that trending the last couple of days. We'll see if they can pull off an upset here against the Terps. But I think ultimately, this Maryland starting five, also referred to as the Crab Five, I think that they're just really dangerous. And I think teams that can score at a high clip are tough to beat in March. And so for that reason, I have the Terps here. Don't be surprised if they bust some brackets and make a run in the tournament. And I have them sneaking away from Grand Canyon.
Yeah, I got Maryland here too. I just think they're a better all-around squad. Derek Queen is he's exciting to watch. He's going to put up some points, and so I think Maryland, grabs this one.
Let's talk about this upset that I have brewing right here. I have a feeling you're going to like this one. Drake taking on Missouri. Really two drastic styles. Drake likes to play a really fast pace, excuse me, and Missouri likes to slow things down a little bit. I have Drake in this one. This is a team that I've picked in years past to make runs. They haven't done it yet, and I think that this is the year that this Drake team I think that fast pace of play finally pays off for them. And I think they're able to pick up an upset here against Mizzou. So give me the 11th seed over the 6th seed here in the West region.
I got Missouri here. I think they're going to slow it down. Drake does play fast and they shoot the ball a lot. They actually don't connect too often. And for that reason, I think a defensive backcourt and a slow-paced Missouri team can slow them down if they're missing. They're not capitalizing on those early opportunities. So I think Missouri takes the dub here.
Next up, 3 versus 14, Texas Tech taking on UNC Wilmington. As Texas Tech teams look good as of late, I think they can score in a variety of ways. And so for that reason, I'm going to take the Red Raiders here, and there's not much else to it.
Yeah, I got the Red Raiders, complete team coming out of the Big 12. JT Toppin, exciting, right? I think he has a big game, and I don't think UNC Wilmington will be much of a match.
This is where things get really interesting in this matchup. You kind of have this weird trio of some of the best coaches in really of all time in college basketball. 10 versus 7, Bill Self taking on John Calipari. Both teams having disappointing seasons by their fan base's standards, but nevertheless, we're going to see them face off in the first round. Kansas, the preseason #1, I believe, coming into the year. They've kind of been a dumpster fire the second half of the season. And Arkansas, kind of the same thing for them as well. I take Arkansas in this one, but if Kansas finds a way to squeak it out, I'm not going to be shocked there by any means. I just think the Arkansas, they're getting some of their guys back. They're going to be healthy, and I think Coach Cal is going to have these guys ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I got KU here. I think as of recent, I'd actually lean towards Bill Self in the tournament. And then also I think Arkansas, while they do have some talent, they're led by young guys, and I don't love that. Kansas, although having a mediocre year, at the end of the day is led by a bunch of veterans, and so I like that here. And I expect them to pick up a win over a young Arkansas.
At the very bottom, we got St. John's taking on Omaha. This game's getting played in Providence, which is essentially in the backyard for St. John's. And I think, like I said, with some of these other lopsided matchups, I think that Johnny's team is red hot. Literally, pun intended there, because their mascot is the Red Storm. I really like Rick Pitino in this tournament. I think he's completely flipped this program around. And I think, this is a St. John's team that people need to watch out for. I do question their ability to make free throws and shoot the deep ball, but I don't think that'll be a problem against 15 seed Omaha. So give me St. John's.
Yeah, I agree here. I think St. John's, even though they're coming out of a weaker Big East, or at least a disappointing Big East, with Yukon Huskies and Marquette Golden Eagles not performing how we expected, they've cleaned up whenever they had to. I mean, they haven't lost to any of those top three Big East teams outside of themselves uh, throughout the season. So I think St. John's gets an easy dub here.
Let's go back to the top of the West region here. Looking at the second round, Florida versus Yukon. The Gators will get their first real test against the Dan Hurley-led Huskies team. Yukon, they have some guys that they brought back from last year. And so for that reason, I think that they, could be a threat to Florida. But watching this Florida team in the regular season and the SEC tournament, they can just do it in so many ways. I think they're really well coached. And I think they're just going to be too much for this Yukon team to handle. I think that the experience of Florida and really just their overall dominance is going to be too much for a Yukon team that, in my opinion, has just really been too inconsistent throughout the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dan Hurley, I'm going to pay my respects to him. I think he'll have his boys playing better than their talent level. But at the end of the day, Florida is too talented. They're going to overpower UConn. They can play big, they can play small. They got experience in the backcourt. They got big guys up front. They can play inside and they can shoot the three. So yeah, I like Florida here. And I'd also like to point out, I've been talking about Michigan State being the most complete team in the tournament. I'd sort of like to retract that statement. I think Florida overtakes that spot just due to their size and those big man's ability to play a complete game of basketball.
The fellas both have Florida going to the Sweet 16. Next up on the dock, Memphis and Maryland, a 5 versus 4. We really don't see these 5 versus 4 matchups, at least predicted as often, because people love to take the 12s and the 13 seeds, even as we've seen in our brackets. I like this Maryland team. Like we talked about earlier, they're fun to watch. Um, I just think that the experience and how much they can score is really going to be a problem for this Memphis team, especially if some of those guys are still out for this Memphis squad. Obviously, dealing with a little bit of the injury bug there. I just think Maryland's more complete. And for that reason, I like the Terps to get the dub here.
Yeah, I agree. I got Maryland as well. One thing I don't love about Maryland is their best player doesn't shoot the three ball. That being said, they're going to run into like you said, a Memphis team that sort of had a rocky end of their season, dealing with injuries and whatnot. And so I like Maryland here.
Next up for me, I have 11 seed Drake taking on number 3 seed Texas Tech. And I'm not going to lie, this is a situation where I would love to go with Drake to make a run to the Sweet 16, but I think ultimately reality is going to kick in for the Bulldogs. I like this Texas Tech team. I like the way they play. Like Hunter mentioned earlier, JT Toppin, one of the best players in college basketball. I think he's going to have this way or have his way against this Drake defense a little bit. And I think as Drake kind of tries to play with that fast pace of play. I just think that if they're not able to make shots, it's going to be a long day for them against the Red Raiders. So give me Texas Tech in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I got Texas Tech as well. I had them matched up against Missouri. But overall, I just think Texas Tech's the better team. They can shoot the three, they can play inside. And for that reason, I'm going to take Texas Tech.
At the bottom here, I have the John Calipari Rick Pitino matchup. A lot of history here. Both coaches spending somewhat of their time in their career at Kentucky. Obviously, haven't been the best of friends throughout their careers. I think it makes for a really interesting matchup just because obviously St. John's is going to be the better team on paper, but you could make the argument that when you're just looking at talent level overall, Arkansas has, some of the best guys in the country that Cal brought over from Kentucky and that he recruited last year. Despite that, I just think that the St. John's team is nasty and I think they're tough. And I just don't think that Arkansas is going to be able to match the physicality of this Rick Pitino squad. And so for that reason, give me the Red Storm to advance to the Sweet 16 for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I got St. John's making their move to the Sweet 16 as well. They're going to be dancing. I like RJ, sorry, excuse me. Uh, yeah, RJ Lewis, and he puts up a lot of points. I know the concern is the three-point shooting. That being said, I know the numbers don't look great, but look at some of the past games for the St. John Red Storm. They can get hot from the three-point line. They have games where they shoot over 40%. Maybe not a crazy volume, but this team's solid, and I expect them to take down Kansas in my bracket.
Let's get to the Sweet 16 here. I got Florida and Maryland. I have Florida in this one. I just think they're really complete. I think they're dominant. I've already said that. Maryland could give them a run for their money, but I'm going to go with the Gators in this one.
Yep, I got the Gators as well. I really like how they can run three guards at a time, three experienced guards. They can pull out, some of those big guys that Maryland plays through, and I think they're going to take advantage of that and move on to the Elite Eight.
Looking at the Texas Tech St. John's matchup that we both had, I'd love to take St. John's here, but I think this is where the shooting catches up to them. I think Texas Tech is able to really just do too much on the offensive end for St. John's to catch up. If St. John's is behind, I question their ability to play from behind and try, play hero ball a little bit. And so I like Texas Tech in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Texas Tech for the same reasons. I just sort of I think it's a pretty even matchup, but I just hope that Texas Tech gets hot, shoots the three ball, and St. John's can't manage to keep up. And so for that reason, I'm gonna take Texas Tech.
All right. So that brings us to Florida and Texas Tech in the Elite Eight. I know it's pretty stereotypical to take the one seeds to the Final Four. I'm going to do it here. I really like this Florida team. I think if there's one team or one seed that's going to get to the Final Four that I'm the most confident in, it's this Florida squad. So give me the Gators. Tom, Tom.
Yeah, I agree. I got the Gators as well. I think they're the personally, I think they're the best one seed in the tournament. They had a relatively easy bracket, in my opinion. Obviously, you have St. John's, Texas Tech down at the bottom. They're pretty good. But I just see Florida sort of making their way to the Final Four relatively easily.
That will take us to the top right here, tackling the East region. We're going to start to pick up a little bit more through these just in terms of pace. Duke taking on the winner of I don't even know who, looking at my bracket here, just has the abbreviations. I don't think it's going to matter. I have Duke. They have the best player in the tournament. So give me the Blue Devils.
I got Duke as well. I just hope Cooper Flag's healthy, and if he is, they're gonna roll.
Takes us to an 8-9 Mississippi State and Baylor. I think this game's a coin flip. VJ Edgecombe, one of the guards for Baylor, one of the more exciting guys to watch in college basketball, just purely off of his athleticism around the rim. I think they're going to be fun to watch. And I like this Baylor team to pull off a little bit of an upset here, 9 versus 8. So give me the Golden Bears.
I agree. I think it's a pretty good even matchup. I just like watching Baylor more, so I chose Baylor.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did as well. So glad we're on the same page there. This is a game coming up we're not going to be on the same page on. I can tell you that right now. Oregon versus Liberty, 5 versus 12. I am taking the Flames for no other reason than I hate Oregon with every ounce in my body. If you've been following the channel, you should know that by now. I will never pick Oregon to win a game in March Madness. Doesn't matter what they're seeded, doesn't matter how good they are. So give me the Flames.
Yeah, this is a pretty easy pick here for me. I got Oregon. You know what they say, January, February, Altman. Altman's gonna have these guys ready to go. It's gonna be easy victory for the Ducks here.
Who says that? Who says that besides you?
Plenty of guys over on the west side,
Yeah. That
west
brings
side
us
of the
to,
United States.
well, we're going to see here in a couple days, but that brings us to Arizona and Akron. A battle of the A's. I have Arizona in this one. I think that Caleb Love is due for another generational run in March Madness. Obviously, him being a senior this year. A lot of people like Akron in this one. I totally understand, but I really like Tommy Lloyd as a coach. I like the experience and talent that this Arizona squad has. So give me the Wildcats.
Yeah, I got Arizona here as well. Obviously Akron sort of heated up at the end of the year, but at the end of the day, it's a 4 versus 13. And I think it's a solid Arizona squad. That's relatively healthy. They got a star that is a veteran, so I like them picking up the dub.
That moves us on down to BYU and VCU. I really like this VCU team. I want to put that first, but I do have them losing. I think BYU is red hot. I think they got that Mormon magic going for them, and I like BYU and the Cougars here to make a deep run in this tournament.
Mm, let's party like it's 2011, baby. I got VCU. They play defense. They shoot the three. They play fast. They're exciting. I like VCU right here.
I wanted to take them so bad, but there's just something about this BYU team that I like. Now, don't get me wrong. If they lose and you're right on this VCU pick, I'm not going to be shocked. But there's just something about them that I like, and I can't put my finger on it.
I'll just VCU makes the tournament more often than half, the Power Five teams, and so they're due for a run. 2011's been too long. It's time for another Sweet 16 run out of VCU.
I like it. I like it. Speaking of teams that are due, we have Wisconsin taking on Montana. Wisconsin obviously losing to Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. I've watched this Montana team play actually a little bit. They're playing over in Boise in the Big Sky tournament. Unfortunately, I just don't think they're anything special, and I'm going to take Wisconsin to beat them handedly.
Yeah, I remember when the Ducks blew out Montana by 30 earlier this year, and so for that reason, I'm gonna take Wisconsin.
I like it. I like it. Moving on down, 10 seed Vanderbilt versus 7 seed St. Mary's. I like the Gales here. I think they're due for a run. This is a team we see in the tournament. Vanderbilt, I think, got a little favoritism since they're in the SEC. But I like St. Mary's here. They're a West Coast team. And if it's not the University of Oregon, I'm going to back my West Coast schools. So I'm going to go with St. Mary's here.
Yeah, I agree. I got St. Mary's here as well. I actually don't really think they're due for a run. They play too slow for me. Maybe that's just a me thing, but um, I do have St. Mary's over Vanderbilt here. I think they're just prepared to win, but I don't see him making him past the Vandy.
Um, that brings us to Alabama and Robert Morris. 2 versus 15. I know Alabama's banged up. Grant Nelson availability is questionable, but I don't think that's going to be a problem, at least not yet for this Alabama squad. So give me the Tide in a blowout.
Yep, I agree here. I think I have Bama versus St. Mary's, just like. Oh, sorry, excuse me. I'm moving ahead here. I got Bama over Robert Morris because they're better than them, and they run and they play fast and they're fun to watch, and they'll probably beat them 110 to 40.
That's that's a little extreme, but I like it. I like it. We'll zoom out a little bit, go into the second round. Duke versus Baylor. I would love to see Baylor give Duke a run, but I just don't think it's in the cards. I have the Blue Devils. Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I agree. Baylor was just all right in a weak Big 12, and Duke was great in a decent ACC. I got Cooper Flag leading this team past Baylor pretty easily.
That brings us to, in my bracket, Liberty versus Arizona. I'd love to take another 12 seed on a run here, but based on what we're going to see here in the Midwest region, Liberty's run, excuse me, is going to end here. I have the Wildcats and an experienced team under Tommy Lloyd making their run to the Sweet 16.
I got the Ducks for the same reason. I just think Altman takes them to the Sweet 16 every year, just about every year. So I got the Ducks over Arizona. I think Arizona's pretty inefficient from the field, or at least their stars are, the guys they lean on, and so I'm gonna take the Ducks for that reason.
Actually, I'm gonna, kind of get outside of my own boundaries here. I think it's a good pick. Honestly, I do think Oregon's a team to watch out for in this tournament. But just my personal vendetta against them, you're just never gonna see them making a run in my bracket. But watch out for the Ducks this year, seriously. I have BYU in Wisconsin. I know you have VCU pulling off the upset there. I like the Mormons. I probably should stop saying that, but I like BYU to make a run here against Wisconsin. I think they play at a good enough pace. I think if they are playing them on the right day and they can shoot the ball well, they're going to have enough to beat this Wisconsin squad. So give me the Cougars here.
I got VCU in this one, taking over Wisconsin. Like I said, let's party like it's 2011. These guys play really good defense. They're the only team in the nation that is they're I believe top 20 in steal rate, as well as top 30 in steal rate and top 30 in 2-point defense. And I think that bodes well for them here, and they take a defensive dub.
Leads us to St. Mary's in Alabama. Hunter, I know you hinted a little bit earlier that it seems like you're going to take the Tide in this one, but I have St. Mary's strictly because of the fact that this Alabama team has been up and down. They have been struggling to score a little bit at times this season. And so I think that if they have an off day against this St. Mary's team that plays a really slow, methodical style of basketball, then I think that they could beat the Tide. There's no doubt that Alabama has more talent, especially if Grant Nelson's playing. But if he's not healthy, I just think that somehow the madness could catch up to this Alabama team. So give me St. Mary's to go to the Sweet 16 and face BYU as a 7 seed.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Bama here. I actually got to watch the Gales in person, and while I think they're a solid team, they like to slow down the pace, and I understand that could work against Alabama. But at the end of the day, these Gales rarely put up even 70 points, and I'm not sure Alabama has scored under 70 points this year. So I think even if they are able to slow down the Tide a little bit, they're not, at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to handle the nonstop attack from Alabama. And so I got Alabama moving on to the Sweet 16.
Let's look at the Sweet 16 here in the Midwest, or excuse me, the East region. I have Duke facing Arizona. Pretty classic rivalry here. Not even a rivalry necessarily, but just a battle between two blue blood programs. Give me Duke in this one. I think as long as Cooper Flag's healthy, Duke really hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. For that reason, I'm going to keep riding with the Blue Devils.
Yeah, I have Oregon here, but I don't really think it matters who they match up against, and that hurts me to say as a Duck. But at the end of the day, Duke, before entering the ACC tournament, was riding I think a 6-game win streak by 30 plus points. That's just remarkable. I don't think anything's slowing down the Blue Devils. They roll into the Elite Eight.
That brings me to BYU and St. Mary's. And this is where I think BYU continues the Cinderella story, making the Elite Eight. Give me BYU to beat St. Mary's in the Sweet 16. It's really just a gut feeling. This region could go a bunch of different ways, especially on the lower half of it. But I like BYU in this situation. I like the way they play. They're playing a solid brand of basketball right now. And so I'm going to go with BYU in this one.
Yeah, so I actually have a totally different matchup in my bracket. I have VCU versus Alabama. And I know I might receive some hate here, especially, considering I've picked quite a few upsets so far. But like I said, I'm rolling with VCU all the way. I like the Rams this year. And I'd like to go back, since we're flipping through these picks so quickly, I sort of messed up my notes there. So VCU ranks in the top 30 in 2-point defense, 3-point defense, 3-point percentage defense, 2-point defense, steals and blocks. That's all pretty much all four major categories in defense in their top 30. I understand they're not in the greatest conference, but that's insane to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think if VCU, like especially what I talked about, like if Bama's not healthy and they match up with a VCU squad that is tenacious on the defensive side of the basketball, that could be trouble for an Alabama team. And so I think VCU is a good move. I'm not personally doing it, but I like the boldness coming from our boy
Yeah.
Hunter Fullerton here. So that brings me to Duke and BYU in the Elite Eight. I know it's cookie cutter to take the one seeds. I just don't see anyone stopping Duke in this region. So give me Duke to go to the Final Four for the first time here in the last couple of years, I guess, since they played North Carolina in Coach K's last game. But I like the Blue Devils, and I like their chances in this region to get back to the Final Four.
Yeah, I got Duke here as well. Usually I pick against freshmen, but at the end of the day, Cooper Flag and Con Knuckle are different. And so they play like they're veterans, so I got Duke here.
That is going to take us to the Midwest region. This is our fourth and final region here of the NCAA tournament before we get into the Final Four. Starting at the top, Houston and SIU Edwardsville. This game's going to be a blowout, and I have Houston.
Yeah, I got Houston as well. Easy pick. Easy pick.
Bringing it down to the 8 versus 9, Battle of the Bulldogs, battle of teams that start with G. Gonzaga and Georgia duking it out here. Really interesting to see Gonzaga, another team that we've seen make deep runs in recent years, as an 8 seed, similar to what we talked about with UConn. And just because of Mark Few and his experience in the tournament, I like them to beat Georgia here. I also think Ryan Nembhard is one of the best guards in college basketball. And so for that reason, I'm going to be riding with Gonzaga.
Yeah, I'm riding with Gonzaga here as well. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, Gonzaga has played in the West Coast Conference here for quite a while, and despite playing in a weak conference, they've gone to 9 straight Sweet 16s. So do not pick against Mark Few.
I like that. I like that. Next up, we have Clemson and McNeese, 5 versus 12 seed. I need to take a minute here to get very serious. I'm going to put my hat forward. And if you're watching this, I need you to look me right in my eyes. McNeese State is a problem, a real life problem. They're going to beat Clemson and they're going to make a run. We'll get into that a little bit later. But McNeese State is for real. Will Wade used to be the coach at LSU. He has SEC experience. He's ready to go. Their manager, Amir Khan, is out here rapping before the games, listening to music that people normally don't listen to. And so I like the swagger of this McNeese State team. I like the way they play. They're going to beat Clemson coming from a weak ACC conference. And McNeese is going to win this game. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, so
That's going backwards now.
I'm going, I'm gonna roll with Clemson here. They got experience. They made a run last year. I got Chase Hunter from Atlanta, Georgia. That boy tough. And here, at the end of the day, before the ACC tournament, they're riding a 9-game win streak. They're 27-6, 18-2 in ACC play, and of their 6 losses, 3 came in overtime. So this team is just an inch away from being 31-3 and matching Duke for the top record in the ACC. So I got Clemson rolling here.
Safe pick, no doubt. That brings us to Purdue and High Point. High Point University, going to be real. Never heard of them before the selection show happened on Sunday, but their fans seemed really into it. This seems like a team that has a lot of energy, plays with a lot of energy. I just think that eventually Purdue is going to get out of the first round. And I think that this is the year that they can do it.
Yeah, I got Purdue as well. I don't think they can get upset every year, so they have to. Although I guess they made it in the national championship last year, but
Yeah, that is true.
they can't get upset like this every year. I mean, it'd be embarrassing. I got Purdue here.
Next up, we have one of the most interesting matchups in the first round, in my opinion. Illinois taking on the winner of Texas and Xavier. Texas maybe isn't the best team that we've seen, but They got hot at the right time. They won the games they needed to in the SEC tournament. So they earned the right to take on Xavier team in the play-in games, but I don't think it's going to matter. I have Illinois. Uh, I'm favoring the Big Ten teams in this tournament just because I think it's one of the better conferences in basketball. I know that they haven't been super hot down the stretch, but I think that Brad Underwood's going to have these guys ready to rock and roll. I think Illinois is going to get it done in the first round.
Yeah, I'm not in love with Illinois here, but I'm also picking them. I think Texas wins that playing game, and then sort of just taking the lesser of two evils. I don't love Texas either, so I'm taking Illinois over Texas. Uh, uh, More and just because I'm not a fan of either team, I guess.
Well, as long as Illinois is able to get past that game and survive an upset, they'll be taking on the winner of 3 seed Kentucky and 14 seed Troy. This seems like a cupcake game, but if you watch 3 seed Kentucky play Oakland last year, you would know that Kentucky is prone to losing to 14 seeds. Obviously, last year losing to Jack Golke and company, March Madness legend. I have Kentucky in this one. It's a new Kentucky team. Mark Pope's at the helm now instead of Cal, and I just like this Kentucky team to win in the first round.
Yeah, I agree. They brought back some players from last year. They got a new coach. I don't think they want to repeat. So I think Kentucky's going to play a good game and beat Troy pretty easily.
Looking at the very bottom here, 7 seed UCLA and 10 seed Utah State. I think this game's a coin flip. I really do think it can go either way. I just think that Mick Cronin has a little bit more championship experience and a little bit just more experience winning, I guess you could say. And so for that reason, I'm going to take UCLA. But if Utah State wins, I'm definitely not going to be surprised.
I'm taking UCLA because I watched them quite a bit this year, and I think other teams hate to play against them. They've been successful. Some teams, obviously, they're not sporting a crazy record, but they're going to make it dirty. They're going to make it, rough out there, and so other teams are not going to enjoy that. And for that reason, I'm taking UCLA in the first round.
That brings us to the very bottom here, 2 versus 15, Tennessee and Wofford, Rick Barnes and company. I have Tennessee, and I really don't think this one's going to be close.
Yeah, I agree. Tennessee, obviously, they lost to Florida on Sunday, but outside of that, they made a good run in the SEC tournament. They look pretty complete. They got, experienced guards. I'd like to see that. So it's going to be easy win, and I expect them, to move on throughout the tournament, mostly due to that experienced guard play, like I was saying.
Zooming back out into the second round and heading to the top of the region, Houston and Gonzaga. I think this game is going to be really close. I think that if Houston can get past this game, it's only going to get easier for them, at least within their region. And so I like the Houston Cougars in this one. I like Kelvin Sampson to make a run in this tournament. Obviously, Gonzaga, especially being coached by Mark Few, you can never count them out, like you said, the consecutive streaks in the Sweet 16. But I like the Houston Cougars here.
Yeah, I'm going to go back on what I said. Eventually, a streak has to come to an end. I got Houston here. They're very complete. They have a better, they're sporting a better offense this year than they've had in the past, but they still have that same stifling defense. I think it's a tough matchup. Gonzaga can play inside with them, and they have some experienced guards. Obviously, Ryan Nemhard leading uh, Division One in assists. But I think Houston ultimately is a better team. They're going to run away with the dub.
It takes us to my Cinderella, McNeese. Hunter took Clemson because he's soft. But I have McNeese here, and I have them beating Purdue in the second round. Like I said, I think this team's poised for a run. I think my rant said enough about how I feel about this team. I mean, someone's going to do it, whether it's McNeese or whether it's Colorado State or some other random team. Someone's going to make a Cinderella run. I'm putting my chips on McNeese State, and we'll see if it pays off. Hopefully, it does.
I don't know if a 5 seed's considered a Cinderella, but I got the Clemson Tigers taking down Purdue as well. Um, like I said, I think they're really hot, sporting 9 wins before the ACC tournament. They got experience. They went on a run last year, and they're going to be back for more.
Next up, Illinois and Kentucky. I have Illinois, actually. I think that this Kentucky team is a little bit too inconsistent for my liking. I really do like Mark Pope, though. I think he's a really good coach. I think as the years come, this Kentucky team is going to be back to where we normally see him at the top of the food chain in college basketball. something in my gut tells me that Illinois is going to be able to win this game. I cannot tell you what that is, but I'm going to go with the Fighting Illini here to knock off Kentucky.
I'm gonna take the opposite take. I'm going Kentucky with as surprising as this sound, based on past Kentucky teams. I'm taking Kentucky strictly due to consistency. Illinois is, a talented squad. They got some good freshmen, handling the ball. That being said, this team is extremely inconsistent. We've seen them get blown out multiple times this year, and they're not sporting the best quad one record, although they do have experience um, playing a lot of quad one games. They don't really have that many wins, and so I'm going to take Kentucky strictly due to consistency issues here.
Looking at the very bottom here, UCLA and Tennessee. I think that this is a sleeper game. I think that people need to watch out for UCLA. Like you said, they make things nasty. But I like Tennessee here. I tend to favor Rick Barnes in the tournament. I like his teams to make deep runs, and I think they're going to do that here once again in this year's tournament. So I have them over UCLA.
Yeah, I got Tennessee as well. They got Chaz Lanier this year, putting up big numbers, shoots the three ball well, and then they have the Tennessee all-time leader in steals. And so I like an experienced backcourt, a tough backcourt, and I don't think they're going to want to go down, and they're not going to go down here. So they're going to move on into the Sweet 16.
Looking at the Sweet 16 here in the Midwest region, I have Houston knocking off my beloved McNeese State. But I think Houston is really poised for a deep run this year. Obviously, it's easy to say that about the one seeds, but I like the experience they have. I like the motivation they have, just with the way they're playing and kind of what those guys have been through on that team. I'm obviously losing, their teammate from last year as well. So I have Houston making the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I really like Houston as well here, or sorry, in general. But I'm actually going to go the other way and take Clemson here. My thought is, I'm sort of just hoping for a hot game out of Clemson. I don't. Eventually, one of the one seeds got to go down, and I just think the Clemson Tigers are the most fit to do it. And so I'm really hoping for a good game out of their veteran leaders. And I think they're a pretty complete team, and so for that reason, they have a chance against this Houston Cougar squad. Even though I think Houston might be the better team. So I'm hoping Clemson walks away with a dub here, strictly due, from having a good game.
Going down to the very bottom here, Illinois and Kentucky, or excuse me, Illinois and Tennessee. I think you had Kentucky and Tennessee in an SEC matchup there. I'm going to go with the Vols
Yep.
here. I really like the experienced backcourt. I like the way they play. And I just think that they're going to be a little too much for Kentucky. Obviously, these teams have already seen each other multiple times this season, but I like Tennessee here, and that would lead to a 1 versus 2 matchup in the Elite Eight with Houston and Tennessee.
Yeah, I got a Tennessee, Kentucky down here. At the end of the day, it's tough to beat a team three times, at least a good team. It's tough to beat three times. And Kentucky's already done it twice. So I think Tennessee's going to pull this one out and move on to the Elite Eight.
That brings us to our Elite Eight. We both, or no, you have Clemson, but I have Houston and Tennessee here, 1 versus 2. No surprises, at least at this part of my bracket. Give me Houston to win here. Don't get me wrong, I would love to take Tennessee to the Final Four, especially with their strength of schedule and the way they've been playing. But I'm riding the Houston train this year, and I can't put my finger on why, but my bracket has just developed that way, and I think Houston's going to knock off Tennessee.
Mm, mm, That's good reasoning. Like I said, I like the Cougars in this tournament. That being said, somebody's got to make it to the Final Four that we didn't expect. Somebody's got to break some brackets. So let me roll with Clemson here over Tennessee as they move on to the Final Four, breaking everybody's bracket and leaving me with the only perfect one left.
I like it. I like the confidence. So that's going to take us to the final four. Yours is a lot more interesting than mine. And so for that reason, I'm going to let you handle the reins here. Give me who you think is going to be in the national championship game, and then give me your champion.
All right, all right, all right. So I got my Final Four just to set it up. In San Antonio, I got Michigan State and Florida. Or I guess it's all in San Antonio. Excuse me, that was a dumb comment. But I got Michigan State and Florida coming from, one side of the bracket, and Duke and Clemson coming from the other side of the bracket. Uh, at the end of the day, sort of like zooming out, I think the ACC wasn't great this year, so it is, a little scary to have two ACC teams matching up in the Final Four, but I think the cards just fell that way or were dealt that way. Um, at the end of the day, before I even filled in this bracket at all, my top two teams were Florida and Duke. And so I think I got to roll with my gut, take both those teams. I think Michigan State, is prepared, to beat Florida. That being said, I think Florida's just a more complete team. They can play a little better inside out. And so for that reason, I'm taking Florida into the final. And then for the Duke Clemson matchup, like I said, Magic has to run out eventually. I think Duke probably blows Clemson out here. ACC teams matching up. And I just think Duke's the better squad. And Clemson, eventually they're going to have a bad game or their run's going to end. So I got Florida and Duke matching up in the final.
Who's your champion?
Okay, I didn't know we were going to champions. There, I got Florida over Duke. I don't know. I don't think it's Duke's year. They're playing with freshmen, and I know these freshmen are crazy good. Uh, but it's just something's different about this Gator team. I was watching them in the SEC tournament. Man, they look ready to win. I mean, and they can, like I said, they can play a ton of different lineups. They can run three guards, on the floor at a time. They're all athletic. They play defense. They can all shoot the three. They can bring in big men. They can also shoot the three. They can run pick and rolls. I think they're just too complete. And they're peaking at the right time. They just picked up an SEC championship. So I think I got to take Florida here in the finals and just sort of roll with my gut.
You heard it here first. Hunter Fullerton's champion is the Florida Gators. I like it. I really like your reasoning with a lot of those picks as well. It will be interesting to see, excuse me, how Florida fares down in their region. Obviously, with some of the elite coaches that they have down there, and obviously the way that works out, they're on two different sides of the region. But if it's Florida and St. John's or Texas Tech, or even, like if an Ole Miss team, because I believe Ole Miss is down there, if they're able to make a run, kind of what does that look like for them? And so I think Florida is complete. I think it's totally valid to have them as a champion. Looking at my Final Four, coming from the left side, I have Michigan State and Florida. Coming for the right side, I have Duke and Houston. Looking at Michigan State and Florida, really interesting matchup here. Like you said, Florida, very complete team. Michigan State, maybe not as complete, but definitely very athletic. They're dynamic. They can do a lot of different things. I just think the size of Florida is going to be a problem for this Michigan State team, especially with the 7-footers that Florida brings to the table. I just don't know if Michigan State can necessarily match that, even though they have some pretty strong wing play to go along with that Gator backcourt. And then on the other side, I have Duke and Houston. I think this game could go down to the wire. We saw these two teams duke it out, pun intended, last season in the tournament. I like Houston to get their get back against the Blue Devils. Like you said, with the inexperience of Duke, I think, the freshman phenoms, eventually they're going to run out of magic. And I just think they're really not used to playing this many games, at least this many high pressure games where it's single elimination. And so that's where I think the experience of Houston finally pays off and it catches up to them. And so I think Houston's going to be in the national championship game and give me Florida to beat Michigan State, giving us a Florida versus Houston national championship where I'm going to go with the Houston Cougars. I think they're going to beat Florida. I think it's going to be a very close game. Obviously, if Florida wins, I'm not going to be, my socks aren't going to be knocked off. But I like this Houston team. I like the storyline. I like the experience. These are guys that have been around this program for a long time. And I would just really like to see the loyalty pay off a little bit for Kelvin Sampson and company. This is a team that year after year, for what seems like the last 5 or 6 seasons at least, is always in contention for a Final Four appearance. And they really just haven't been able to get it done quite yet. And so I think that this is a year that Houston finally accomplishes their ultimate goal in the national championship. So that's my final thoughts. Do you have anything left before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think you made some good picks. Not quite as good as mine, and you'll see that once your bracket's busted, the first day. But I do like the Houston pick. Obviously, San Antonio, Texas, that's got to play to their favor. But yeah, the Houston Cougars, they've been knocking on the door for years now, and maybe it's their time. Maybe it's their chance. We'll
Yeah.
see.
No doubt. Well, that is going to wrap it up for this episode of Chop It Up. Be sure to enjoy this March Madness tournament. I feel like we always take it for granted. Be sure to go watch Liberty beat Oregon, and be sure to go watch McNeese State ruined Clemson's bracket on day one, or at least in the first round. Maybe it's day two. I don't really know. But that's going to wrap it up for our March Madness bracket breakdown. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to go check us out on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and Instagram. And we will catch you guys later.
Peace.